allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you very much. Welcome to everyone. I'd like a motion to enter into an open session of the Budget Committee. Carol Willow, who is by the way, the chair of our Budget Committee, and I'll take a second. Ms. Cashabo, and all in favor? Thank you very much. And we're in budget. Ms. Fields, would you like to begin?
I shall, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. And if you're at home watching online, thank you for watching online as well. It is March 19th, and this is the next session in our budget development. First, if you are watching at home, if you have any questions that come up throughout the presentation, please email communications@nccs-k12.org. This account will be monitored all night, and when we turn to the time for questions to be asked, our communications representatives will let us know if there are any questions, and we'll be happy to try to answer those for you. As we remind ourselves at the beginning of every presentation, we stand fast for our mission, and our mission drives everything we do. And if there's any way that you can express your values, you express your values through how you spend your time and how you spend your money. And how we spend our money is our budget. So our first part of our mission is that all of our students are provided the opportunity and the necessary support to engage in relevant, challenging work which will contribute to their academic and social growth and development. That's always been a part of our mission statement. We want them to grow academically, but we also want them to grow as people. We are working with children. Whether they're 5 or 15, they're still children. We're trying to help them grow and be the best version of themselves they can possibly be. And that all of us as staff, teachers, and administrators together are part of a learning community. We have to grow and evolve in order to be able to offer the most relevant education to all of our students, and that is something that we commit to very seriously. Today's children have different needs, and the future looks very different than the future looked when I was in school. Our 3 pillars are the outgrowth from our mission statement, and if the mission statement is why we do the work, this kind of gets to the how we do the work. We focus on academic excellence. We're proud of what we can offer for our students and what they can achieve while they're in our schools. We focus on equity, meaning that all students get the opportunities and the support they need to access all the opportunities within the district. And then we focus, as our mission statement says, on the social, emotional health and well-being of our students. That has always been a pillar, but I certainly think that is a pillar that has become more and more recognized since the pandemic and beyond. Tonight's focus is on information technology, which covers both the technology that our students use each and every day, as well as all of the infrastructure that makes that technology work. We are very lucky that tonight we'll have Julie Scriven, our Director of Information Technology, presenting to us. Again, since we learned since the pandemic, technology has never been more important. We know it's in our lives, it's in our students' lives, and making all of that work in a district our size and keeping all of that safe is really important. And Julie runs a big program, and she has much to share with you tonight. So I'm going to turn it right over to Julie. I don't even have to tell you how to use this because this is your department.
All right, well, welcome to IT Night. Historically, this presentation has gone a little on the long side, so I'm going to hope to speed it up a little bit tonight, but I want to offer plenty of time for people to ask questions because historically we've had a lot of questions on IT Night. Tonight we're going to have a brief department overview, then we're going to talk about instructional hardware, and we'll kind of break that down into 2 categories. One is stuff in our replacement cycle. That's things that we already have on hand but are coming to end of life and need to be replaced, or we will lose program functionality. And then I kind of separate that from new equipment, which is new things to support new curriculum, new programs, or just new functions that we would like to do. Next, we'll talk a little bit about network hardware. For those of you who don't know him, I have our Assistant Director of Technology, Keith Sprague, who also sometimes wears the network administrator hat. So if anybody has any really deep dive questions on the network, we may pull Keith into the conversation. Then we're gonna talk a little bit about security cameras. And I had taken this out, but I heard that there was some conversation last week on the Smart Schools Bond Act, so we're gonna do a little bit of a review of what that is and what the categories where we can spend money are, and kind of just a brief overview of that, because I know that some of the board members who are here now were not here when we initially did our plans in 2016, 17, and 2017, 2018. Okay. So a little overview again. I'm Julie Scriven, that's Keith Sprague. We also have 4 network and systems technicians who roam the district. We have 1 senior technology assistant at the junior high. Hopefully soon we will have a cybersecurity officer. We have an active right now. We also have 8 building level computer aides who are our front line of support in every building. We're a little shy of them right now, so we also have a posting for some computer aides. So if you know of anybody, we are accepting applications. And I'd like to talk a little bit about technology stats. We have this slide every year, and I think it gives a really nice overview of kind of the trends of what we've been purchasing over the last couple of years. So if we go back to 2017, 2018, at the bottom, you'll notice we were keeping about 6,900 items, and if you look down at this year, the total of the devices that we're supporting is about double that. And most of the increases we've seen have been in Chromebooks, obviously, because we've gone one-to-one with our students. But you'll also see that the number of PCs has increased. That's twofold. One of the reasons is just we have more employees now than we did in 2017, 2018, but we also have a lot more employees that need a PC to actually do their job. So that number has gone up. Most of our Apple products have gone down. The one that hasn't is iPads. We have a lot of special education students who require them with their IEPs, so we still keep a fleet of those in stock. You'll see that our phones are leveling off because we've now put one in every classroom, so we really don't need to add more. One of the places where I can see that we are going to be adding more is in the security cameras. We did do a basic install in every single one of our buildings, part of the building project, and then afterwards in our elementary schools, but we will need to add more. We'll be talking about that a little later in the presentation. And last of all, our LED touch panels and TVs should level off after this year because, believe it or not, we're about to replace, hopefully, our last projectors in the high school this year. So after that, we should just be doing kind of swap outs and maybe here or there, but that should be pretty level from here on out. Okay, so we're going to start with the replacement cycle, and I kind of break off the Chromebooks because they're kind of their own entity. So every year, if you come to our meeting, we usually replace grades 1, 5, and 9. The reason we do that is logistically it's the most efficient, because in first grade you can hand your first grader a Chromebook, they keep it for 4 years. In 5th grade they turn it back in, they get their new one for 4 years, and again in 9th grade the same thing happens. What we found is that even though Google will tell you they'll support software for more than 4 years on a Chromebook, unfortunately the physical Chromebook really doesn't last in a student's hand much longer than 4 years. After 4 years, we've noticed that the battery life really severely decreases, and you won't get a full day in the classroom with it. And just the wear and tear on a Chromebook that's in a student backpack on the bus, it's hard. It's really hard, and they're pretty beat up by the end. So when they turn their Chromebooks back in after 4 years, we actually don't recycle them right away. We use them in our loaner carts. And believe it or not, every Chromebook we have ever purchased, whether it was Dell or HP, as long as it wasn't a touchscreen, all use the same exact screen. So when we are finished with the Chromebook, when it's past its usable life from a support perspective, we rip out every single screen in those Chromebooks and store them in our carts room and use them to replace them when students have a little bit of an oopsie and crack their screen. So it's drastically cut down on our repair costs, and it's awesome. So one thing that's a little bit different this year is every 4 years we have to replace our kindergarten fleet of Chromebooks. We do assign them to students in kindergarten, but they don't take them with them. They leave them in the cart for the next class the next year, and we reassign them. We do take the time to assign them, though, to a student, because we found that if your name is on the Chromebook, you tend to take care of it a lot better. And if for any reason we need to go remote, they're already assigned to students and really easy to hand back out. So this is our year to replace those. The other thing that you'll notice on this slide is that the quantity seems a little bit high. That's higher than our actual enrollment in those grades. And that's because each year we buy Chromebooks, we need to buy anywhere between 15 and 20% extra to cover for breakage, loss, and use limits. And then every year we buy about 60 to replace ones that our staff use. These are generally educational aides, teaching assistants, and some other positions that use Chromebooks. Any questions on Chromebooks before I move on?
Just noticing that the item price for the kindergarten Chromebooks are $377 versus $312 for the rest.
It is, and I should mention that this year we are planning to buy touchscreen Chromebooks for the kindergartners, so theirs are a little bit higher priced. And to be honest, the total cost of ownership is probably going to be a little bit higher because if those screens break, not only can we not use the ones that we have in our back room, but they're very expensive to replace. So we're trying it in one grade level. We're going to see how it goes. And I think in general, we thought it would be most appropriate for the kindergartners.
And if this is later on, we'll skip it, but you mentioned repair costs. We talked about the screens, which is great. What are our other repair costs that we incur?
Honestly, in general, the repair costs, it's our free labor that's doing it. So we don't send any of them out. We don't buy extra warranties. Most of our repairs are keyboards and honestly mostly screens. It's mostly dropped, or funny enough, they leave a pencil in the Chromebook and they close the lid and put it in their backpack and it gets squished in between their books. We occasionally have some water damage or other things, but honestly the highest is the broken screens and loss. So.
Julia, a comment which I don't think is for you, but since it's about Chromebooks, I'll do it now. So on behalf of Jackson Cannon and his fellow fourth grade friends, there's been a lot of excitement lately that they haven't had to bring their Chromebook home every day. I think that's in preparation for the state testing. So I don't know if there's any thought to that of, how often we're bringing these home, if they have to go home every day. An argument could be made that perhaps a little less wear and tear in that instance. Just throwing it out there. But
That is true. I will say one of the interesting pieces we have is that we have to file emergency plans with the state in the event of any emergency. And post-pandemic, one of the requirements of that came that if there were some kind of an emergency that was impacting one of our schools, I don't know, there was some kind of power outage that was going to last for days or something like that, that we have to be able to switch to remote instruction, and it has to be synchronous, and our kids have to be able to access it. So that has been a challenge, because I think a lot of us saw a lot of kids on technology during the pandemic, and we would like a lot less time on technology for our kids. But that idea now, this happens to be a year where there was no snow, and we had plenty of snow days, so that really, we have snow days to use, but we have to always be ready. And so earlier in the year, we have to have them at home because it is part of our safety plan that we had to file with New York State.
I just needed to check a box first.
There you go.
I'm fine.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we'll move on to the rest of the replacement cycle. All right, and I apologize, this is a very big list, and I'm going to try and go through them fairly quickly. So to start with, we have 172 2-in-1 laptops that are mostly for teaching staff, but some of our regular staff as well. We have an additional 10 laptops that are a little bit higher end. The graphics cards are higher, and also the processor. Those are mostly used for CAD or ARC, or sometimes for people who are users of our camera system. Believe it or not, we have 30 desktops that we need to replace this year that are off on the replacement cycle. Those are mostly student kiosks, a couple of places where we have them behind TVs, various locations around the district. Every year we purchase about 40 docking stations. Unfortunately, we found docking stations have about a 2 to 3 year lifespan. They just die, so we buy about 40 every year. This year we have 28 iPads of the 64 gig variety that need to be replaced replaced. Most of those are in students' hands who have IEPs. As we talked about before about the TVs in high school, we are replacing projectors. We estimate that we're going to be buying 20 TVs and 37 touch panels. I will say the proportion of touch panels we're buying this year is a little higher than we normally buy, and that's because we didn't buy touch panels during the pandemic. And this is kind of our last chance to buy them, where we want to swap out a TV for a touch panel. Now we've got a place for the TV to go, but next year after all the projectors are gone, if you want to swap one out, well, we kind of be throwing it on the TV. So kind of put the word out, if you need one, let me know, we'll swap it out. So we got many more requests for them this year. Then there are, of course, the mounts for those TVs. And then we get into the labs. So this year is our year to replace all 3 physics labs at the high school. They're getting laptops. They are also getting a piece of testing equipment that connects to the laptops. If any of you remember any old desktops, that old serial connection we used to connect modems with, their old sensors for their labs actually have that old connection, and that really can't connect to any modern computer, so we're replacing about 14 of those. In the middle school, one of the tech labs in room W102 is getting replaced. We also have one of the 3 business labs that's due for replacement this year. There is an art cart that's getting replaced with laptops in the middle school. Then we have 90 iPads. These are part of some iPad carts at the elementary school, so there's 15 at each of the 6 elementaries. And then we have color LaserJet in the middle school in one of the art rooms, as well as 2 3D printers for Southgate, who has had theirs for quite a number of years, and theirs are no longer functioning. Then we have found out we started getting Apple Pencils for the iPads in high school, but lo and behold, Apple Pencils are a little fragile. So normally I wouldn't put an item that's kind of material of supply on this list, but they're kind of expensive when you buy 30 of them. So we're going to keep about 30 in stock as spares. And the last thing on this list is kind of expensive, but it's a proprietary laptop that runs the Daktronics fancy scoreboard for the swim meets in our pool area. They need 2 laptops to run it. One is a proprietary one we can use whatever we want. The one that's whatever we want is going to be the cheapest one we can buy. The other one has to be this $2,700 one from Daktronics, unfortunately. I'm going to stop here for a second. Any questions on this?
So there was a good answer on the Chromebook replacements of where they go and how you, and I know that can't happen for everything on this list, but since it's replacement, are there things here that
There
you'll
are.
see?
So I would say in general, our laptops, for instance, if it's just a regular laptop that like a teacher or someone like myself might use, it's more towards a 5-year replacement cycle. Some of the more specialized and higher level things like the computers we use for CAD and the ones we use for art, we're a little bit limited and have to replace them quicker. And I will go into a little more detail on that. For instance, CAD, Autodesk is very generous now. We used to have to purchase it, but now they give it to us for free. But part of the caveat of getting it for free is that we have to go to their newest version every year, and unfortunately, we then have no control over the system requirements for that new version. And so we found if we don't replace those every 4 years, we want to run into trouble where all of a sudden we're at September and the version they're forcing us to go to, we can't run on our equipment. So in general, if there are machines that are like those CAD machines after 4 years, we will try and roll them to other locations. We might use them in food service for a while. We might use them at the student kiosks instead of buying a new one. So we generally try and push them as long as possible. And if the CAD ones can go another year, and we find out the software's good, we'll actually hold off ordering them until the spring so that we get a whole other year's worth of use out of them.
Any other questions from the board?
Somebody had one. Did you have? Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have a question, I just have a comment, but I'm in physics right now and seeing the new additions, I'm kind of jealous for like my brother's taking physics next
next year. Because having a lot of personal experience from this, I just think it's going to be a really like great addition, like the new technology. Because sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's work, and like it makes it hard in our labs a lot in our classrooms. So I'm very jealous of my brother that gets to use this amazing technology next year. And as a student, I appreciate you guys like really listening to our concerns.
Thank you.
Physics is always easier the second time around if you want to. I wouldn't know. I didn't take physics when I heard.
All right, does anybody else have any questions? All right, I'm gonna move on to the new items. Okay, so this is actually a shorter list than usual, but I'm gonna go through it all. This I kind of like, they're asking for a large iPad Pro for the music department at the middle school. They'd like to use it for the musical score for both their concerts and their plays. I think it's a great idea, so that's one of the new additions for the middle school. We have a lot of requests from the innovation labs at the middle school. So I'll start with the first one. It's from our simulations lab. They would like 2 more iPads to control their drones. They have, I think, about 8, and they want 10 total. In the robotics lab, they've been using these really cool robots called Ozobots, but they found that they kind of are not holding up very well over time. So rather than buying another set of Ozobots, Brian Ashland has requested these McQueen robots. They already use the same controllers as some of the other stuff that they use, so we only need to buy 20 of the controllers, and he's really looking forward to them. He is also requesting a 3D printer to print parts for their robotics lab to use. Next, we have the Clean Tech Lab. They are requesting 8 3D printers of the kind of smaller normal size to print class projects, and then 1 larger one that has, it's like a big bed and it has 5 printing heads for larger things. We also have a request from the Makerspace from Katara Westbrook for 4 additional iPads for some of the software she runs there. We this year have had quite an influx of ELL students, and for those of you who were at the meeting last year we bought a bunch of iPads for a translation app that we put in all of the main offices, our nurse's office, and the registrar. And we found this year that they were really useful to have in the classrooms as well for the teachers to communicate with students. We've put about 25 out this year, and we anticipate putting another 40 next year. We're hoping to use grant money to purchase these, but I want to put it in the budget just in case we don't have enough grant money to buy all of them. We also need to buy 10 iPads to have on hand for new SPED students who have iPads in their IUP. We'd like to have, because this year we did not have enough, so we have to buy more. We have a new transportation program that the mechanics use in the bus garage, and it requires them to have tablets that they can use in the bus garage at the buses. So they've asked for 10 tablets for there. In the art department, we talked about them using iPads. One of the really cool things they do with their iPads is they make these stop motion movies. And in G210, they would love to project those up to the TV screen. And most of our classrooms really are set to project from a Windows laptop and not from an Apple product. So we're buying an Apple TV so they can go direct from their iPads up to the screen to show their movies. In the fitness room at the high school this year, they purchased a new app called Output Fitness that helps track like your reps and your weights when you're going through the fitness circuit. And so they've requested more iPads for the students to be able to input each time they're going around their fitness routine. They've also requested 1 more 86-inch TV for the F gym on the wall to help project while they're in their PE classes. And then I really, really like this request from the middle school. They are requesting 5 TVs for hall announcements and emergency announcements. These are going to be located at kind of juncture points in the middle school on the walls, big, and also one in the main office where students can see the daily announcements, as well as if there were anything going on that was emergency, we could put that information up on those boards. And there are TV mounts to go along with them. Anybody have any questions on this?
Did we get any grant funding for this year on translation on?
Yes, we did.
I was noticing on you have like the different iPads with the different memory? Is there like a software requirement?
It is some, so, we do in people services, they, have a program called ProLife 2. It's for communication for students. It's like a pictorial representation that students can click on who are nonverbal. And that program takes up a lot of space because you have to store those maps and pictures for the student individually. So we tend to get larger space ones for those in particular because we've run into trouble where we run out of space and just had to buy a completely different iPad. Occasionally too in the art world, there are a few places where we bought larger ones at the high school. In the elementary school, we haven't had that problem, so those are the smaller ones.
Any other board question?
I would just like to go back to your question about grant funding, Mrs. Nerdalillo. So this year, because we did have such a large addition of students who speak English as a second language this year, the state did adjust our funding mid-year, which just almost never happens. We're one of the very few districts that did receive that. Granted, it was only about $27,000 for the adjustment, and it does have very particular ways you can spend it. You can't spend it on staffing, which could be something you could really use, but you can use it on technology, anything to assist the students. So that may be some of the funding that we can use for the iPads for the students in our English language learning program.
Very good, thank you.
Sure.
Do we have any community members with questions? Ms. Griffin?
Okay, we're just gonna do a really quick summary. So right now at this point, we've got the Chromebook 1, which is $753,000, the normal replacement cycle, which is $550, and the department additions, which are $67,000, which brings our total to about 1.3, almost 1.4, which is pretty much in line where we are every year. If you've been to my presentations, that's a pretty common number. Okay, our network list is really long and detailed. I have tried to summarize it as best as possible on this list. If you have detailed questions about any of these items, please ask. I will do my best to answer them. If they're really nitty-gritty, I may call on Keith to help out. But I'm gonna bob through this list. One thing to note, we buy equipment through a federal program called E-Rate for our networks. And it comes in 5-year cycles, and we're heading towards the end of one of those cycles. So we've used up most of our E-Rate money, and we use most of it buying switches and wireless access points. If you were at my presentations in years past, our bottom line number for networking was very similar to this number, but the proportion of the money spent on switches and wireless access points was higher in years past. So this year you're gonna see some other things we're purchasing instead of that. We do have a few switches we're replacing. We also have some additional wireless access points we're getting. Most of those are exterior wireless access points. Some of them are for sporting fields outside or just general coverage outside the building. Some are for our elementary school to support our Raptor emergency management system because we need to take attendance outside the buildings, and some of them have very poor cell coverage, so we need the extra Wi-Fi coverage out in the fields and playgrounds that surround those schools. The third line is some licensing support that is there every year to support our Wi-Fi and switches. We are buying a variety of UPS, which are our battery backups. Every year we replace some of them, so we don't have a huge amount in any one year. We also have support for our really large battery backups, both at the high school and the middle school and the main server rooms. We are hopefully buying a network monitor this year, which is going to help with our cybersecurity. The next line is Brian here. He's not here. Well, I'm going to send a big shout out and a thank you to Brian Kraft. You'll see there's an item there for fiber and Cat 6 cable. We have a wonderful maintenance department here in Orange County, and they actually run, I would say, probably almost all, 99% of our network runs to classrooms, which is a huge savings in labor for us. It's an amazing savings in labor. So this is raw cable for them to run for, let's say we're putting a new camera or a new Wi-Fi access point, or somebody needs another network connection in the room. That's the cable here, as well as some patch cables in the closet. And you'll see farther down, we're actually buying a tool that will help us basically turn purchases for us are some replacement servers. 2 of them are for camp servers that were originally purchased in about 2019 and are now due to be replaced. The others are for our server farm that we can talk today, that support our VM environment. We also have 2 storage arrays we need to buy, so those are giant, crazy big hard drives. One of them is because we are running shy of space on our backup system, and the other one is about to go into support life next year in our VM environment. So we're not running out of space there, but it's about to lose its support for security updates, so we're going to need to replace that. The next line is for students. It's actually, some of you may know them as Kajits. They're the Wi-Fi hotspots that students who don't have internet at home are provided by the district, so that they can use their Chromebooks at home. The next line is a complete mouthful, and I apologize because I'm going to get tongue-tied. It's the emergency backup cellular network coverage. This year we had some incidents where a couple of our schools lost their fiber connection was cut, and some of them even lost power as well. And it wasn't a big deal for students who were using Chromebooks. Teachers can always use the Blackboard, but where we were really concerned is in the main office and in our nurse's office. Like, think about students who have insulin monitors that need to be connected to the internet constantly. So there are some reasons that we really need to connect. When it happened, I'll use the example of Southgate. When it happened there, we brought over our emergency Kajits, tried to use them, and found that the cell coverage at that building was not great. So these emergency backup cell coverage things have giant antennas that are much better than on your cell phone, and we've been testing them out and they work great. So we're planning to buy at least one for every building just as a backup in case of an emergency. Last, there's some server racks that we're going to need to put in, and the other big ticket item at the bottom is cybersecurity 24/7 monitoring. Because we're a public live stream, I'm not going to delve too far into the details because I kind of don't want to tip our cards as to what we have. We do already have some 24/7 monitoring in place. This is to complement that and add it to some of our other products. Right now, it's through NARIC. I'm hoping that we can continue to purchase more of these services through NARIC because we'll get aid in the following year back on those purchases. But if you think about a school district and when school districts are attacked, it is never between 7 and 4 in the day. Those cyber criminals are smart. And when all of the big attacks have happened across the country, they have been on the Friday night before a school holiday, or on the 4th of July, or on Christmas Eve, when all of us are sleeping. And so these 24/7 monitoring services actually have the ability to start shutting down our equipment if they see something happening to prevent the spread of it. They can just start shutting down parts of our network to keep us safe. So very critical and important to have in place. So last thing I'm going to say on the slide is at the bottom, you're going to notice our E-rate aid estimated is a little bit light this year. That's because we're on the low side of that, but to make up for that, anything we can buy through BOCES, we will buy through BOCES. The BOCES aid is a little bit over 50%. The E-rate aid, Keith, you can correct me, but it's somewhere between 55 and 60?
It's 50.
Oh, now 50 again. Okay. Never mind. 50, about the same. So, any questions on the long list of important items?
Sam, any questions?
No?
I was thinking, great question from before, I just didn't know if anything like the Wi-Fi hotspots or emergency backup, I wonder if any of that qualified under, if there's any of the grant money left from COVID times, like, because some of this stuff seems like it would qualify. I'm not sure.
I don't think we have any COVID money left. I'm looking at Kathy for this, but I'm pretty sure we burned through all of that.
Yeah, we spent it now.
We did. There are some other options we'll see later in my slides that could be used towards those things, but there are some caveats with it. So we'll kind of talk about that when we get to it. Other questions?
I can't remember the name, but I know someone told me it like a month ago.
Yep.
What, the Wi-Fi hotspot
Yep.
one? Isn't there like a federal grant or?
Yes.
Do we qualify for that?
And we used that initially, but when we got the Kajits, didn't we get that through a grant initially during the Time Warner or whatever
There
you call
are, those
them.
are direct to people. So in other words, if you are low income, you yourself could apply to Spectrum to get that, but I can't do it for you. There are some other programs that they were trying to get off the ground at one point that would allow us to kind of buy for them, but it never really took shape, so. Any other? So we have a very condensed slide with a lot of detail in the background behind the scenes. So I will kind of talk in just a general sense about security cameras. So originally in the first building project, we had planned to put security cameras in every single one of our buildings in the first building plan. CSR just did the plans for them, drew out where they thought our cameras should go. And at some point along the way of the project, a lot of those cameras got cut. We're supposed to put them back in, then anyway, didn't end up happening. Last year, we did purchase a number of cameras to fill in at the remaining schools that weren't covered by the building project. So all of our schools have basic camera coverage. Every exterior, outside wall, all the hallways, great coverage. But now, we need to go back and fill in what I kind of like to call the nooks and crannies. So there are spots along our buildings where they dip in, where we need nicer coverage. There are long walls where we might want to add several cameras, where we only have one or two, so that the coverage, that what you can see, the details of the image is a little sharper. We have some stairwells that we'd like a little better coverage. We have some, but we'd like better coverage. So some of this has been put forward by the buildings themselves, some of it has been put by the maintenance folks and Ryan Craft, and some of it we're going to get from Needham. We've done an estimate of what we think we need for the buildings. This is going to be, I'm going to be upfront and honest, this is going to be an iterative process. Every year, we are going to have to add some more cameras. So I am hoping that next year, the number of cameras will be a lot smaller. I'm going to hope and guess about 50,000. But I also want to see people's thoughts that the original cameras that we bought for the junior high were in 2019, 2020. And industry estimates say you should replace your cameras every 5 to 10 years. So we're not too far off from at some point having to start replacing those middle school cameras. And I'd like to try and spread it out a little bit so we don't get hit all in one year. But this might be an opportunity to use some smart schools money if we can plan ahead for it. And that might actually be a really good segue into the next slide. But I'm going to kind of stop here to let people see this. I do have a detailed slide for this that shows every camera that we're thinking of. There are 144 of them, and I didn't think people would want to see them, so I have kind of condensed that information to just the summary details. But if you have questions, let's talk about them now before I move on to the smart schools kind of review. Anybody?
There's totals here, like dollar amounts by building, but I don't see like, it's not like camera counts.
There aren't, and I can provide you that if you want. I have another document that has all the camera counts. Each of the cameras cost a different amount. They're not all like, I can't say, oh, they're getting 20 cameras and they're $1,000 each, because for each location, we've actually detailed the specific camera we want and whether or not it includes labor. One of the places we're trying to save money on this part of the project is, again, as I said, our maintenance department is awesome, and they can run the physical cable for us, and for the interior cameras, as long as it's in one of the drop ceilings and there's nothing fancy, my guys can actually install the camera, we can aim it, we can load it in the software, we can do all of that ourselves. The only ones where I included labor were the ones that were maybe up on the second story, someplace where we might need a lift or a really tall ladder, or we might be doing some extensive, like, kind of piping on the outside of the building where I don't feel comfortable with my people doing that. That should be a professional to do that part. So we tried to cut down labor as best we can, and we would like to see the full list of 144, which shows you every quantity for every building. I am happy to provide that.
So the 266,409 includes the cost of all of the cameras plus the cost of all the labor for installation. It's like
It does, and there's
inclusive cost.
Yes. And the one thing that I will also say about this is we are hoping to potentially buy this through BOCES, which would be great, because then 50% of it would come back to us in aid to the general fund the following year. So that's
there going to be corresponding increases in storage costs? I mean, we saw a big number for storage, but I don't know, I know that, I don't know, is that something we can talk about?
We can, I mean, as we add more cameras, definitely there will be more. We just put in, when the elementary cameras went in, we just put in camera servers for those, and they have a pretty good amount of storage. The ones where we're struggling with both the storage, and honestly, we're struggling because the processors on them were pretty weak, the ones at the middle school, and they just can't handle the load. So that's why we're replacing 2 of those now. I think in a general sense, we'll probably, budget to replace as we go, because the next ones were at the high school. Like they're kind of sequentially purchased, not all at once. So that will be part of our ongoing purchase. But a very good point, as you add more, definitely you need more space to sort of get. Okay, any more questions? All right, we're going to go on to talk about smart schools. All right. So I'll take a little time just to explain what Smart Schools is for those of you who weren't here when we first did follow the original plan. So Smart Schools was an act that was voted on in 2014, 2015. It provided about $2 billion to schools to improve their technology and just anything to improve teaching and learning. Our school in particular was allotted $1.8 million. We've used so far $477 for networking equipment and about $819 in 2 separate applications for classroom technology. One of those was on a light, a lean budget year. We used it to buy some of the replacement cycle items. And then on another lean year, we used it to actually buy Chromebooks to fill in where we didn't have much dollars for it. So we have about $541,095 left. It doesn't expire, so we can keep this in our pocket. If we have a lean year later on, it could be used to fill in. It could be used for some other purposes as well. But there are some things you need to know about Smart Schools money. The application process is long, really, really long. So in a good year, it's 9 months from the day you start till the day you get approved. And the unfortunate part is you can't order a single item until that's fully approved. So, for instance, the cameras that we just bought to fill in the elementary schools, we were desperate to get those cameras in. But during COVID, there was a 9-month lead time ordering cameras. And if you added the 9 months to the year of the application process, we would have been 1 year, 9 months out from buying any cameras. So it from a time perspective was very prohibitive. So as we look at what we want to spend it on, just know that whatever we spend it on, we kind of need to plan well in advance to do so. But I do want to show you, we don't normally show this slide, but for those of you who weren't here, I have another slide that kind of talks about the categories. So I do want to take just a little bit of time about what sorts of things you can purchase. And then I also have a detailed sheet for those of you who want to see the super specific items. I'm happy to provide that to you. So one thing to note about Smart Schools Bond Act is they kind of group the categories into 2 groups. One is shareable, they're non-public schools, and one group is not. So what does that mean? Well, anything we buy under those first 2 categories up there, we have to proportionately give some of that money to our non-public schools that reside within our school boundaries. And those proportions are unfortunately based upon enrollment numbers from 2014-2015 school year. And for those of you who don't know, back in 2014, we only had 5,371 students. And our non-public schools had over 1,000. So if we purchase things out of those shareable categories, essentially we will only be able to spend $453,000 on the 541 we have left. The rest will have to give to the non-public schools in our area, which they can choose to spend
very beginning of Smart Schools, that actually wasn't a shareable one, so we actually didn't share a part of that. They actually grandfathered and gave us extra money later when that rule came into play. But now, if we buy network equipment, that money is shareable. So anything from switches to cabling, the only exception to that is if you're running a cable like underground, where obviously it can't be shared. That part is not considered shareable. Any instructional tech devices, which pretty much is anything that's considered to enhance teaching and learning in the classroom itself. So think teacher laptops, Chromebooks for kids, the TVs on the wall, a ViewSonic touch panel, lab computers, any of those things will qualify. Most of the stuff on the replacement cycle under that instructional hardware qualifies for that one. So then we can look at not shareable things. So universal pre-K program space is not shareable. So you can construct new spaces, you can enhance or modernize your current spaces to house pre-K, and any of those expenses are eligible for this program. They still have to go through the normal SED approval process, and on top of that, Smart School, so there's a little added extra time, so think about that. The next one down is replacing classroom trailers, which I really hope we never ever possibly use. The only time that you would be allowed to use that is if you were so over capacity that you had to actually house your classes in a trailer in the parking lot outside your school, and you could then build classrooms to replace those trailers. So let's cross our fingers that never ever happens to us. And the last one is one that we might choose to use. It's high-tech security features. So this is security systems, security cameras, remote door latches, intercoms, central lockdown buttons, anything that physically hardened your doors or your vestibules, like some of the films we bought for the windows, different things like that. The one thing, unfortunately, that it does not include, and I actually had, unfortunately, an email from them saying specifically it doesn't include it, are the radios. We wanted to try and get the long-range radios, since it's a very expensive item for safety and security. I thought for sure we'd be able to do that, but according to them, not eligible. That's pretty much it on those. Any questions about Smart School contact?
Any questions for Julie before she leaves the podium?
Okay.
Thank you, Julie.
Next week is March 27th.
Yes, so on March 27th, we will have a bigger meeting because of where the break week falls and the timelines that we need to put in place in order to meet the regulations. We're combining two meetings. So next week, March 27th, so that's a Wednesday, because we have our monthly board meeting on Monday. We'll be doing staffing, we'll be doing building enrollment, we'll also be doing new program proposals. So that would normally be one meeting, because that's a pretty involved meeting. And then we will also be doing what would have been a separate meeting, but we'll do it the same night. We'll go over the whole budget in total. We'll do a review of the budget. Sybil will give us an updated tax cap calculation, as well as the property tax report card. And then once that is done and questions are done, the board would then formally adopt the proposed budget next Wednesday, May 27th. That would be the budget that goes up in front of our voters. We'll have a hearing on that on May 8th, and then our election and budget vote is on May 21st.
Ms. Gibbs, what's our contingency plan if the state budget drastically is different? We have to revisit any or all of this.
At this point, the information we're getting is that we won't be harmed
Okay.
any more than we already are. Our hope is just that we get that restoration of that additional $400,000.
But we are planning based on the governor's budget as if nothing else comes through, because we have to.
Yep.
We won't have it in time.
All right, thank you everyone, thank you for being here. I'll make a motion to return to special session and adjourn. Mrs. Nordell and anyone down there, Dr. Nino, all in favor? Thank you very much.